Greetings, ladies and gentlefish, and welcome to a pair of subscriber replays, courtesy of British Bee from the SIG clan. These two games are going to have something in common which should hopefully become apparent by the end of the second game. So, British Bee in this game is driving the AMX 1357 something. F, that's the Badger. This is a relatively new premium tier 7 French light tank. It gets this little 57mm autoloader which does 90 damage per shot, gets 143 penetration. That penetration goes up to 195 if you're willing to load a little bit of APCR. He's here on Malinovka, which is a good light tank map, and he's going to try and get some spotting. Now, this particular version of the 1357 was only available for a limited period of time, and it was specifically available as like a wargaming promotional tank, and so you can see that British has got the wargamingleague.net stuff slapped across the side of it. That's the camo that this tank came with. This has good side and a bad side. Some people didn't like the fact that it had this camo on it. Fair enough to them. Goodbye, Mr. T29. And for those people who don't like the fact that it has that camo, I believe there is going to be a version of the 1357 without that F at the end that it doesn't have that camo, so they have that option. But if you have got the wargaming version, you can't give it camo, which you might be thinking, what? I can't customize it? That sucks. Well, yes, but on the other hand, that wargaming logo counts as camo on every map. So, with this thing, you will always get a little bit of a buff to your camo rating. Anyway, British is here on Malinovka. It's a tier 9 game, which is middle of the road matchmaking for a tier 7 light tank. It's not a tier 10 game, which is worst case scenario. It's not a tier 8 game, which is best case scenario. And he is in the bushes down by the swamp, trying to get a little bit of spotting done. Now, the French light tanks aren't dedicated scouts. They get these auto-loading guns, and that's kind of their distinctive feature. But that doesn't mean that you can't scout in them, of course. And he's doing the whole passive scouting thing. He's got camo net, and he's got binos. Some people find this sort of scouting boring. Personally, I do it quite a lot. If you know your maps, then this can be some of the most effective scouting. Now, a lot of people will tell you that passive spotting like this is dead. A lot of people are wrong. It's been rather nerfed by wargaming as they've removed a lot of the concealment, a lot of this soft cover, you know, the bushes, the trees, all that jazz, from a number of maps, and they've flattened them out, making it a lot more difficult to perform that role, regardless of what sort of tank you're driving, but not impossible, and you can still have very good games doing that. Providing, of course, you've got the patience for it. So British has just been gradually moving forwards. Friendly teams just killed the enemy KV-4, which is nice, and that T-44 is not looking particularly healthy either. And the Bulldog just went down, so the scoreline is 3-0. T-44 went down, 4-0. This is looking pretty good. And British is just slowly making his way through the bushes. Now, one of the things, of course, when doing this kind of passive spotting is that you do effectively commit yourself to being a scout. It's sometimes quite difficult to retreat from those kind of passive spotting locations without giving your position away. The problem with this, of course, is that you are actually reliant on your team to not be sitting there with their thumb stuck up their nose licking the nearest available window. They need to actually shoot the things that you're spotting, otherwise you are at best useless and at worst dead. So you are a bit team reliant, but there we go, them's the breaks. And you can see British is just looking around him here, trying to look out for anybody who might be about to spot him. And really ruin his day, which would be very, very sad. But no, nothing so far. So just again, bush hopping. Oh, friendly team takes their first loss as the enemy tier 9 artillery piece nukes the Lerva to death. What a shame. British has the side of this ISU-152, but he's not pulling the trigger because he wants to not get spotted or not run the higher risk of getting spotted. Now, if you're paying attention to the mini-map, and the scoreline is now 5-3, if you've been paying attention to the mini-map, you might have noticed that despite the fact that British's team is ahead in terms of the raw score, they are trailing when it comes to map positioning. They have basically just camped base and sacrificed map presence. What does that mean in practice? This means that the enemy team knows, broadly speaking, where they are. They do not know where the enemy team is necessarily. This is bad. It also means that they have been outflanked and they are hemmed into, broadly speaking, they are hemmed into one corner of the map. Now, there's a Super Pershing, an IS and a Tiger who are making a break for it down the other watery road, if you will, H1, J2, K3/4. We'll see how well they do, so possibly we have a flank swap going on, but people like the Tiger 2, the Borsig, the WZ, these guys have all just been sitting in base all bleeding game. The Tiger 2 may actually even be AFK, he is just sitting in the spawn, or sitting in the friendly capture circle, I'm not sure. Scoreline is 8-6. 8-7. And so, 8-8. If I were British, I would not be getting massively warm fuzzies about the outcome of this game, despite the fact that his team got into an early lead. There goes the enemy T-34. Okay, there's only 6 of the enemy tanks remaining, but there's only 7 of the friendly tanks left, so we have to be a little bit careful here. British decides to take this opportunity to move forwards and try and be of some use to his team. Now, one of the problems we have now is that ST1 and IS-6 are unspotted, he says, just as the IS-6 becomes spotted. And so if one of them goes forward, if any of the friendly teams shoot them, they will get lit up themselves, like the ISU for instance, and they will get all kinds of shot up, which is slightly suboptimal, but there we go. Anyway, Super Pershing and Tiger have made it to the enemy base, and British is now leading the charge through the wooded area. The enemy team are, however, in the friendly capture circle. This is a slightly dicey situation, and there's the 212. Can British polish this guy off? 1 shot, 2, 3, and you can see how quickly this autoloader unloads. Oh, that one hurt. That one bounced, and one more. Nope. And that's annoying. That was an ISU 152 152mm BL-10 shell to the face. If I had been British in that location, I think instead of taking shots at the artillery when I did, the artillery ends up nuking him, I'm afraid, I would have run forward to the artillery. It didn't look like the artillery player was paying any attention, got round his sides, his rear, unloaded my magazine into him reliably to kill him, and also then used him as cover from the ISU 152 who was around there somewhere. But it's really easy to say these things with the benefit of hindsight, and the benefit of being able to look at how things are going from a relatively, from a safe perspective. Now, here's the thing. If that Super Pershing and the Tiger had sat in the enemy capture circle, and you could argue if British had done it as well, but British understandably wanted to try and push on and take up that artillery. If these guys had stayed in the enemy capture circle, then they would have probably been able to cap this game out and win. As it is, the enemy got into the capture circle first, and it looks like they're going to get outcapped, which is a bit of a shame. That 212A does eventually die, which is nice. But, yeah. The enemy just outcapture British's team. And you can see that British were up to 98. If they'd have managed to hit 100, that would have forced a draw, which is a loss for both teams, but there we go. So that was game number 1. Let's go and take a quick look at the post-battle stats. And then I've got another game lined up, also from British, and again, as I mentioned, with something in common. So that was clearly a loss, but how did British do out of it? Well, he finished relatively high up on his team. He came 4th on his team, 457 damage dealt, and 403 base experience. Where did that experience come from? Well, he picked up almost 2,000 assistance damage. the wonders of Malinovka, and because of all that assistance damage, he made a fairly respectable 22,500 credit profit without a premium account. With a premium account, that would have been closer to 37,000 credits profit. So, none too shabby there. Let's go and have a look at game number 2. Here's the second game. Now, I actually had someone in a video from last week ask some questions about the Tiger. You know, the legendary Tiger. And so I thought, let's show a video from it. And I've got this replay. Again, this is courtesy of British B. Tiger, for anybody that doesn't know, is Tier 7, one of the Tier 7 heavy tanks for the Germans. He's here on, is this Cliff? Cliff, yes, on the Cliff map. It's a Tier 8 game, which is middle of the road matchmaking for the Tiger. And in this sort of situation, there are quite a lot of heavies on both sides. The friendly team has machines such as a Carnarvon, an IS-3, Super Pershing, even a Jagdtiger can really tank shots. And in this sort of situation, the Tiger is not really a heavy tank. It does not have the armour for it. It has a health pool, but that's about it. So in this sort of game, the Tiger really is a high DPM gun with some tracks. And so really, in this sort of game, you're probably going to... How many times am I going to say in this sort of game? Oh well. You're probably going to end up playing damage support more than anything else. Anyway, we'll see if that's what British does or not. So you can see the friendly team have invested quite a lot of tanks into the 1 and 2 line, into that valley. We've got the Jagdpanzer IV, Borsig, Jagdtiger 88, IS-2 and Carnarvon. Oh, and there's a medium tank down there as well. I must admit, that doesn't give me a warm fuzzy feeling. Oh, and they've already lost the Borsig. Maybe a couple of tanks down there, fine, but that many? I'm not convinced. The Carnarvon, for example, you would really want up the top here. You know, using a couple of those available ridge lines along with his gun depression and fairly respectable turret and upper front plate armour to lay fire down onto people. And that Cromwell's getting wrecked. Oh dear. So, British is here with a friendly IS-3 and an FCM, and there's an ARL in the background. Now the FCM is technically a heavy tank, but really it plays out more like a chunky medium, if we're going to be honest, both in terms of firepower, mobility, armour, the whole skedaddle. That's the Jagdpanther II, who has a damn big gun, and British's team is 0-4 down inside 2.5 minutes. Hurrah! And, you know, he hasn't been able to actually fire a shot yet. That's not a criticism, by the way. It's just one of those things. It happens. Alright, T-44. Hello, good sir. How are you today? And this is the selling point of the Tiger in World of Tanks. The gun prods prodigious amounts of buttock. 88mm gun. Historically, this is actually the gun mounted on the Tiger II rather than the Tiger I, but there we go. 203mm of average penetration, 240 alpha damage, and a badass reload time, and it's pretty accurate to boot. 06. Oh dear. Ugh. Right, T-44, and there he is. Boom. That one bounced, that was unlucky. Oh well. T-44's armour isn't usually up to too much. There we go. One more shot will finish this guy off, and he's dead. 2-7. Now there's a Jagdpanther II, an not an IS-6, sorry, a T-29, a Firefly, a whole bunch of unpleasant things around here. IS-3 takes a shell from that Jagdpanther II. If I were British, I'd have aimed that shot a little bit more carefully because the Jagdpanther II was still reloading. British takes a shell, but not from the Jagdpanther II, thankfully. Leaves the Jagdpanther II on very low health, and he should have the reload on this guy if he aims his shot carefully. There we go. I would advise using sniper mode for those shots, but there we are. Engaging a hull down T-29 is never a position you really want to be in. Now, they've been outflanked by this Firefly. If British goes forward, he has to deal with a hull down T-29, which is an engagement that's only ever really going to have one outcome, and it involves the smoking wreck of a Tiger. So, instead, he is intelligently relocating. Now, remember I said that the friendly team had invested quite a few tanks onto the valley? Well, apparently it wasn't enough, because they've lost the valley, although I think that tells you more about the calibre of player who was there than anything. And now we have the duel of the Tigers. British is dueling it out with the enemy Tiger with a little bit of fire support, and he's definitely getting the upper hand of this engagement. Tiger 1 only has 51 health remaining. Oh, unlucky. Wasn't able to connect that shot. But the FCM polishes the guy off. Now, the enemy team... Oh, they lost their ARL. The enemy team have pushed through the valley. There's only 5 of them left on British's team. This is not looking particularly good. If they're going to win this, they need to go back and defend their capture circle. Shots at the hull of a T-29. Yes, please. I have no idea why that shot went. But whatever, there we go. That's a bit more like the German accuracy we're used to. He doesn't have to shoot at the T-29's turret anymore. He can shoot at his hull, and that's an engagement he can quite happily win. Tiger P over there. The Tiger P's turret is not the best armoured thing in the world. The front of the hull's okay, but the turret, not so much. He takes a shell for his troubles, puts another one into the Tiger P, and his gun reloads faster, although the Tiger P fired first. But as you can see, he manages to pick up the kill, even bouncing a shot, probably from that T-29 in the process, and I would imagine that shot ricocheted off of his turret front. There's 3 of them left. Ugh. Oh dear. There's that T-29 from earlier on. Again, British has shots into the hull of this guy. One more shot should finish this fellow off. Nope, it bounced. Unlucky. One more shot. Nah, the reticule dipped. Now, they are being capped. In order to win this, some guys from the friendly team needed to go back and defend the capture point a lot sooner. Who should have done that? It's difficult to say. I would say always do it yourself, because you can never rely on your team to do anything. That is my perspective. Can British pick up the kill on this T-29? Alas, no. They're just going to be capped out here. And actually, British gets IS-6'd. And that just leaves the FCM-50T, and he's dead. No, he's not dead. No, there we go, he's dead. So, despite the end result, hopefully that gives you some sort of idea on how you might approach playing the Tiger. It is primarily a long-range sniper, but it does have the health to soak up a few shots. It does also have a tendency to catch on fire, which can be annoying. And the armour is not fantastic, but the gun is very good. What I would say with that game is that you need to pay some attention. I would recommend British pay a little bit more attention, perhaps, to the minimap. You can see that there are enemy tanks pushing through the valley. At that point, by the time your team is running out of tanks in the valley and the enemy has pushed through, if you continue fighting where you are, you're going to lose. The only way you can win, and as I say, don't rely on your team because your team sucks. The only way you can win is to go back to base yourself and defend it. You may not succeed, but it at least gives you a chance. Anyway, let's go and take a look at the results for that game. So this was the result of that. It was quite a painful loss in the end. 617 base experience with a standard account, 925 it would have been with a premium account. 3rd class mastery even on a defeat, and that's not without any heroic resistance or any of that jazz. British finished top of his team on experience. He finished top of the game in terms of damage done, 3,420 damage, and 2 kills, but it wasn't enough to secure the win. The gun on the Tiger in that game was uncharacteristically not particularly accurate. Then again, the aim time on the weapon is not fantastic. 3,420 damage, only 783 from a distance of more than 300 meters though, so British was getting a bit more stuck in than people often do with the Tiger, and he still had some success. 16,000 credit profit even on a defeat. So a good game from British there, but not quite enough to win. As I say, if he'd headed back to the capture circle sooner, maybe that would have been a win. It still would have been a bit of an uphill struggle, but there we go. I hope you guys enjoyed that pair of games. Thank you very much, British, for sending them in. If you did enjoy them, please feel free to catch some of my other videos and or subscribe to my channel, and I wish you very happy hunting on that battlefield. Ciao, ciao.